Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Drawing Down the Stars in the Occult Exploration Society. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Dion. How's it going, Dion?
Life is beautiful.
And we have special guests today, Dr. Ammon Hillman of Lady Babylon 666 and Neal Sendlak of Gnostic Informant. How's it going, guys?
It's going good.
Awesome, Snappy. Thanks for the invitation.
So happy to have you here. So we really wanted to do this roundtable because you guys had an incredible experience. You met a really interesting guy named Danny Jones who had you on a podcast, both of you. And now your episode, Ammon, last I checked, is just shy of 700,000, and Neal is just shy of 300,000 views.
Wow.
So these are really making incredible impacts. And everyone in the community is seeing it, and so much has just kind of exploded since these interviews. So first off, we want to just say congratulations on the attention, guys.
Hey, I'm very glad to have this attention right now and it was fun. Danny's awesome. I had fun doing it. And by the way, Ammon, me and Danny were talking about this. My video got so many views because of your video. I'm kind of riding your wave right now. Because your podcast was so explosive and mind-blowing. It got so much attention that when mine dropped, everyone was like, oh, this is going to be following up what happened here. And so it was a wave that I was able to just jump on a wave that was already there. So a lot of it's credit to you.
That's very humble of you, Neal. Incredibly humble, because you could say, hey, brah, I'm going to catch you and strangle you. No, it was an incredible opportunity to be able to go have that platform with Danny. It was, I'm just, I said in the interview, this is the greatest day of my life. And he realized I was serious about that. Oh God, it was gorgeous. So I'm just grateful, man. I mean, the other night we had like 1,300 Greek students, and I thought to myself, you know what? I didn't really accomplish anything until I was kicked out of academia. I didn't really accomplish anything. I'm free now, and oh God, thanks for the opportunity. What an opportunity! So I'm here, totally naked to the truth of whatever it is that you want to know. And Neal, it was an honor to serve with you. It was an honor to serve with you. Yeah, definitely.
I just watched both of the episodes back to back, and I got to say, everyone should do that because they are complementary. Because,
right,
like you said, Neal, Ammon is this explosive intensity where you're Ammon, you have this amazing way of just drawing out these dark images that just shocked Danny, and he did not know how to take them, right? And then when you had the Neal interview, Neal grounded your intensity in reality, right? Like he showed that was so mind-blowing when you did the Lestes thing and you actually walked them through Perseus Tufts, and you're like, this is the number one. He's not making this up.
Right.
And you just showed the Gramo, because yeah, so it really worked as a companion piece, and you guys are really showing the same thing. And it was also interesting watching these interviews in conjunction because I came to a deep realization, okay? So I noticed that in both of your stories, you share the same kind of realization that hidden within this Christianity, within these texts that's been obscured, is this other imagery, this chthonic imagery, this Bacchus and Venus that seem to be behind all of the Christianity and the Gnosticism and a lot of this occulted mysticism. And this really connected to me personally because I had the same experience. It's what got me to Ammon, because when I was studying the Indian, I found the same thing, this deep parallel between Shiva and Durga and Kali and Dionysus and Venus. So I want you guys to talk about the Great Mother and this image and the mystery that you guys truly discovered, because I feel like a lot of people missed that. They pay attention to the drugs and they miss that Bacchus and Venus are behind the mystery.
It's the oldest religion. By the way, what you noticed, Megasthenes noticed when he traveled all the way to India with Alexander the Great. He said, Shiva, this is the Indian Dionysus. He wrote about this in 300 BC, 320, 330, whatever it was BC. So you're not the first one to notice this, and there's a lot of scholarship on this too. It's very obvious.
Oh yeah, tons. I read tons of scholarship, but for me, it was that revelation, recognizing how connected all of this is. Right?
Yeah. What the hell is his name? Shit, I can't remember his name right now. As a Hungarian philologist from 50, 60 years ago, who actually posited that Shiva is cognate with Sabazius through the Indo-European I think Shawa. So Sabazius in Indo-European, and then Shiva in Sanskrit they go back to a common root, going back before writing. So the god itself is even logistically or etymologically connected in that sense. But then the iconographic wise, he's wearing the animal skins. He's horned. He's got the soma drink that's dedicated to him. You drink the soma, Shiva takes you over. You become mad, divinely mad. That's Dionysus, baby. We know who that is. That's the Kukion. They drink the Kukion, and then you become possessed by Dionysus. He wears animal skins. He's horned. He's this madness destroyer god of duality, right?
And you know what? It's not even just Shiva, because doing this deep work inspired by you guys, continuing it, you see the same connection on the Vaishnavite side with Krishna. Krishna is also a cognate of Dionysus, very similar energies, just reflected through a different cultural lens and different time period. But look at him. He's the dancing pan flutist who inspires the gopi cowherds, the women to fall madly in love with him and chase after him. He's the beautiful, perfected, nearly androgynous dancer, right? The most beautiful person. And here's the other thing. He appears as a lowly figure, right? Like he appears to Arjuna as the chariot rider, but he's actually God as inspires him. That's so Dionysus. Dionysus does this, appears as the stranger and shows up.
And you got to say a word. If you're going to say Krishna, I got to hear Radha.
Yeah, exactly. Radha, right? This whole idea too, the lusting after God as the most divine form of inspiration. And you see the same kind of gender transition that Ammon talks about in the Bhakti side, like the Krishna side. Today right now is a major festival to Radha. They're having a big parade in New York, right? The founder of the Hare Krishna movement is this guru named Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What's wild about him is that he became possessed by Radha, the spirit of the goddess, and lusted after God. There's these stories where he would go into like these orgasmic fits where he's crying about the fact that he can't make love to Krishna. And the whole point is that lusting after God as a teenage virgin would lust after their husband, before they've ever made that intimacy is the most high form of love. This is so Bacchic it hurts, right?
Oh, and real quick, before I know Amma wants to say something, but I want to say, as far as that dual nature between Vishnu and Shiva, both of them being part of that Trimurti, that along with Brahma, you see this with the Thracians. They had this god, they called it Zis, and it's etymologically connected to Zeus, but when you see it written off in the inscriptions, it's Zis. And it's got that old Pelasgian characters, that old ancient alphabetic style. You guys know what I'm talking about. It looks almost looks like Etruscan. And you see the Zis. It's very clear. This god had the chthonic and solar attributes, and almost like an Apollonian Dionysian god. Both that, and this is what's written about it too. They compare it to both Apollo and Dionysus, but also Zeus. So it's like this godhead thing. And Sabazius is like this too. Sabazius, is it Zeus? Is it Dionysus? Is it both? And Clement of Alexandria thought of it as a countersign of the mysteries. He thought of Christ in the bosom of the Father as a countersign of the mysteries. And he talks about Sabazius being in the bosom of the Father. And Dionysus is born from the lap of Zeus. So it's like this god comes out of a god type of thing. But yeah, in the East, you have Vishnu and Shiva, both being sort of two faces of this entity, the Trimurti they call it. And yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of overlap with that.
To me, it's just like Apollo and Dionysus, right? Macrobius confirms that Apollo is Dionysus, but reflected through the light of the sun.
Right.
And Dionysus is the sun in the underworld, right? So it's the same. I see them as the same thing, Krishna and Shiva, you know?
That's what Zis, if you look up Thracian Zis, you'll see it's both Apollo and Dionysus rolled. It's the same. This is not something that Macrobius just invented in the 5th century. He's going back to the ancient sources to argue that Apollo and Dionysus are two faces of the same god. And then he goes, Macrobius Saturnalia is one of the best sources ever. Because then he starts talking about being born at the solstice. He says, we have the images in the ancient Athenian calendars where it shows on the winter solstice, he's a little baby. And then it shows him at the midsummer point with the full beard at his oldest. And then at the fall equinox, he's dying. He's at his oldest. And that's when nature dies. So it's mimicking nature, the birth of the sun at the winter solstice. And all that's it's wild. Macrobius is he calls it Yao. He says the name of this syncretic deity is Yao, and then he shoots a bunch of Orphic hymns off to argue his point.
Wow, we got to hear your point, Ammon.
Yeah,
what do you make of all this Bacchus Venus stuff?
Yeah, what a bunch of nerds, man. Seriously. Gorgeous. I love that. And yeah, I think there's some real an understanding of this in antiquity as well. When you have the largest epic in Greek, that is about Dionysus attacking the Ganges, and bringing the mania to India. It was something in the consciousness of antiquity, the spread of the Bacchic Empire, and where its origins. The funny thing is, people are always like, "Oh, let's make Indo-European fake words that don't exist, so we can try to understand where these languages are coming from." Forget that, man. Forget that. Look at the ethnography. Look at the descent from the Pelasgians and start trying to trace it through there. We have the capacity to follow where the origin of the mystery was. I think all the texts that are involved, it's just overwhelming. The texts are just overwhelming. You talked about Iao. This is all I'll say, but you talked about Iao, right? And who is this god Iao? And people don't realize how central that is. Just that sound, Iao, means to heal.
Right.
Yeah. This is central. Apollo. This is Apollo as the light bringer. And you say, wait a minute, I thought you were talking about Dionysus. Yes.
Right.
Apollo is the oracle for 2 years of light. Dionysus is the oracle for the 1 year of darkness. Oh God, it's a cyclical thing. You mean, yeah.
And by the way, so let's talk about Orpheus being the high. He goes back and forth between the mysteries of Apollo and the mysteries of Bacchus, and he has to struggle in that center between the two.
So yeah, you can't distinguish. They're both the oracle that is the servant of the muse. I was just reading this morning Archilochus, and I couldn't believe it. I was shocked that I'd forgotten this, but Archilochus comes out. He's the one who invents iambic. And he comes out and he says, you know what I am? I am a servant of the war god and one who is taught by the muses. And I thought, God damn, it was as early as this lyric stuff it's coming out. It's kind of what follows Homer, right? To make this transition to the real histories, right? That are coming up, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And just to have the mentality that's there, that I'm going to protect the muse. That whole mystery is that Lucifera, that bringer of dawn, right? Oh God, gorgeous. Urania. I love
Beautiful.
that stuff.
So there's one more question I want to ask, and then Dion has a bunch of kind of really crazy questions that he's been collecting that have spurred from your guys' interviews, because people don't know how to take the info you've been dropping. They get all kind of twisted. But before we get into that, there's one big thing that's connected to this great mother and the child lover image, that Bacchus and Venus that we're just talking about. And this is Hail Satan, the devil. And it connects to something that Dion and I right now, we're working on a project where we're exploring the rise of this image of the devil and all of the satanic panics in the West. And it's going to be a long form documentary. And when we're looking into this, we see that Satan is an invented image in the first and second centuries, right? We have Christian theologians like Orosius that says all that is evil is pagan. And
Right.
There's a clear attempt to vilify these two figures of the mother and Dionysus, specifically also Pan, Dionysus's companion, right? So can you talk about what is going on with Hail Satan? What are you really referencing? And what is all of this evil talking about?
Yeah, it's really about apocalypse. There are a group of Christians right from the beginning. Right from the beginning, there are a faction of Christians who call themselves Satanists. And this is in the very beginning of Epiphanius. He lists all the cults, and he mentions the Satanists. Right from the very earliest manifestation of the Christian mystery, there was an anchor in that which is the throne of Saturn. The Greeks from earlier would have looked forward to this if they could have seen it and would have said, look, Kronos is reasserting his authority. We are creating another golden age. And that's what they're doing with the following the Satan, because Satanas is not from Hebrew. Satanas is long old Greek that has dropped out the row from the Saturnian golden age of those sun, moon, stars, and earth, when in the beginning God created Uranus and Gaia, right? It's from that. That's what in the 3rd century, the Jewish authors of the Septuagint, the very first Bible of the Jewish religion, that's what those people were focusing on, was that resurgence of the Saturnian and the overthrow of the legitimate godhood by the fallen Satan. Yes. Yeah. Because remember, Saturn is placed in the underworld. Saturn, when he is overthrown, is contained. And it's only the release of that dragon, that sowing of the teeth, right? And again, the Greeks would be standing around looking at each other like, yeah, no, yeah, look what he's doing. That's how you found the cities, right? With the teeth of the serpent. This is Saturnian. That's why they have the granddaughter of the sun. That's why she's a central figure, right? Helios, Helios is Apollo, right? The fact that we separate like that, we don't connect the divinities, is the precise reason why modern theologians can get away, and Bible studies people can get away with saying we were different from everybody in our surroundings.
This is such a big point we need to highlight. I just want to take a second because so many people miss this. In the central myth of Hellenism is the myth of cycles and the dying and rising God. He dies and rises and takes new forms. Kronos becomes Dionysus, becomes Zagreus.
By the way, for one, Saturn is chained in the underworld, just like the serpent, just like the dragon is in Revelation. But not only that, when Diodorus tells this story about Horus dying, being given the elixir of life by Isis, and then when he resurrects, he doesn't say Horus after that. He continues the story as Osiris, and he hyphenates it with Dionysus. Diodorus says, Osiris is called by the Greeks Dionysus, and Dionysus is called by the Egyptians Osiris. So that baby resurrected is Zagreus. He tells this, by the way, we all know the story of Zagreus being the son of the underworld queen and the king of heaven, Zeus and Persephone, Corey, right? Corey. She gives birth to the divine child Zagreus. He's torn.
Wait, Neal. And how does the Zeus? How does the Uranian
dragon?
Yes, he disguises himself as a dragon.
I forgot about that. I'm glad you put that in there. That's important. The dragon impregnates the queen of the underworld. They have a child. He's called the divine child. He's called Zagreus. Diodorus tells this story, but he doesn't say Zagreus. He says Horus. He just switches it up. He implants Horus into this story, and then baby Horus gets killed. Is given the elixir of immortality. The word Diodorus uses for resurrection is anastasis. The same word they use for resurrection for Jesus in all the Gospels. Anastasis, that's the word we use for resurrection. So literally resurrects and becomes Dionysus. And so for the rest of Diodorus's chronicles, he's either using, he'll say Osiris a couple times, but he usually just goes to Bacchus. And then he starts saying Dionysus set up the kingdom because he was the heir of Ammon. He uses the word. He actually says Ammon, not Zeus. So what is he doing? He's doing this mixing of gods, and they keep coming in and out with different names, and it's confusing unless you have a chart. But you got to remember, Zeus is Ammon. Ammon is also Saturn over here.
It's also like
yeah.
There's people get it so confused. You need to go back to the Orphic where it's most plain, and this is what Ammon is talking about. And you got to understand what Chronos is. Chronos is dividing time at its infinite point, time that cuts everything down. It's a scientific method, right? It's that masculine force of time. What does Saturn do? He castrates Uranus, right? He consumes his children. He is the agricultural god who cuts the shaft of the wheat, right? It's dividing time. And then the Great Mother is expansive time in its ever expanding form. So, these two things together is where the magic comes in. Saturn is that force of authority. You climb the throne and you cut time and you wield her, right?
What it all comes down to, and Diodorus is definitely getting at this, is that all these gods in the ancient pagan world are all different faces of the cosmos, and they're all, when you put it all together, you get Satanism. So Satan is kind of paganism incarnate, and that's why Pan, who is the all, Pan means all in Greek. Pan is the all. Pan becomes the image of the devil in the Middle Ages. That is a correct image. The Christians deserve an A+ for that. That is the correct image for the devil. They're correct. He's the all. And by the way, we talk about Plethon. Plethon, when he's in the Renaissance, right before the Renaissance, he calls Pan the Pantocrator, and he has all these hymns dedicated to Pan. So Pan is Lucifer. Pan is the devil. And that's paganism incarnate.
Yeah, no, Sorry, what can you add to that? Right? Yeah, we're definitely there. right? Do you feel like you're in that grotto? The thing is, if you had been initiated, if the four of us had been initiated and we had been subjected to a death and resurrection, all of this stuff would make a hell of a lot more sense. And you know, that knowledge that you come out, and I'm not talking about just a hippie, throw yourself into some kind of crazy, you know, thing, and then you spin off in space and you got flashbacks. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a disciplined, rigorous approach to both the logos, the eidola, the images, and the reason behind them, and then catapult people into those, you know, just like the space program now, right? They weren't sending people into space, although they did write about that. In some Lucian wrote about that. It's fictional, but they were catapulting people to beyond death and bringing them back, which they described as some kind of, it's a cross where the dark stars are, the stars that were once bright and are now gone, right? Isn't that cool? Which shows you, just think about how much astronomy you're going to have to know as a culture to be able to recognize that you can look up and you can see darkened stars. That's amazing. What kind of brains did these people have? It's gorgeous.
One of the oldest myths that ever, right, is the Pleiades story with Asterope or Merope and Orion, and drawing down the star and then being placed among them. So these ancients were aware of this invisible imagery. Like, they have such an advanced knowledge of astronomy that we don't give them credit for. Just wild stuff. But Dion, take this kind of satanic stuff and go in the directions that you were going. I know you have some questions for these guys about this kind of craziness we've been seeing all over the internet.
Yeah, so, well, I went and I looked on the subreddit groups and checked out some YouTube videos and Facebook groups, and I've learned a lot about you, Ammon, or at least a lot of the different stories out there. So I got a couple questions for you. Well, a series of questions. One is, are you a Freemason?
No, I was invited to be a Freemason when I was on the East Coast. And I decided I couldn't have interest in a group that wouldn't tell me their friggin' address, but directed me via a riddle. I said, you know what? I don't care if I can solve that riddle. And I walked away from it. So no, I'm not a Freemason. And I've gotten some email from Freemasons, popular, you know, movers, intellectuals, and I spank them every time. Every time. They deserve to be spanked. All of you Freemasons, a spanking for you, because they preserve a certain knowledge, but that knowledge requires some diligence and scientific effort. And, you know, come on, man. They're just not putting it out. Sorry if you're a Freemason out there and I just offended you. You know, that's the way. That's what I feel. I'm going to be honest, Dion.
Okay. And speaking of other secret societies, are you involved with the CIA or the government, Bohemian Grove?
Oh, shit.
The Republican Party, John McCain. People think that you are like a secret plant from the CIA, that you were in the military.
Republican. That's hard. That's hard to believe. I mean, what kind of plan would that be for him to be a Republican? I mean, what kind of shit would that be? I
think they're listening to Ammon out of context, and they're just hearing scary buzzwords like Mr. John McCain. So we want to give Ammon a chance to respond.
I volunteered for John McCain, and I have tremendous respect for him as a human being, and what he did in Vietnam. He made a tremendous impact on me. I volunteered for him while I was pursuing a nomination to West Point, from a school that was called originally Special Projects. All of everybody that I worked with in high school ended up in government. And I was supposed to go. I was supposed to do the route of the military as well through West Point. And I decided that I would rather pursue Jesus. And so I did. So am I in the CIA? Of course not. Do I know people who are? Yes, I do. Do I honor their service? You better believe it. You better believe it. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. Yeah.
Great
Good
answer. That's all you need to say. Before we dive more into Ammon questions, I have a question for Neal that a bunch of people brought forward to me, and that is, you told an anecdote about a Mr. Jordan Peterson and how you really upgraded your learning through confrontation with this book. And some people took this as an endorsement, but I know you, and you are well beyond him. Can you talk about Peterson and your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess if you don't know me and don't watch me and you heard that for the first time, me saying that I read Jordan Peterson in prison and it led me down a path of Gnosticism, then I guess you could take that as an endorsement, even though I didn't necessarily say I like the guy. But I was sitting there in prison and I get this brand new book in the mail. This book right here. This isn't the one I had in prison. I didn't take it home with me. I didn't have enough. I couldn't carry it. I had too much stuff to take. That was one of the ones I just left, threw it out. I think I gave it to somebody. But this is a different one that I got when I got out. But anyways, I remember looking at this page and just being like, what the hell is going on with that? And this image just got imprinted in my brain. The serpent on the cross. And he has this whole chapter about the crucified Redeemer as a dragon of chaos. And there's a lot of interesting shit in here from Jordan Peterson from 20 years ago. The guy has changed his whole trajectory of where he's going. He's more political now. I was a fan of his in the early 2010s, and I became a Christian up until, 2019, 2020. I think I was still had one foot in the church. I was on my way out, though. That was when I was really that was when I probably would have considered myself an actual Christian Gnostic at that point. And that's only 4 or 5 years ago. So this isn't that long ago. This is just the truth. This is just the story. I today am not a fan anymore. I am totally on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to worldview, political stuff like that. But that's just part of my story. That's just me telling you what happened. So was it an endorsement? No. Do I endorse him today? No, I don't. At the time, I was a big fan, though. And as I said, I was trying to read the book and understand it. I didn't at the time. Now I kind of understand it more. But I don't know if I don't know. I have a lot of criticisms for the book, but that's a whole different topic anyway. But yeah, that makes sense what I just said? Does that clarify that?
Totally clarifies everything, and we all know you, people who know you, we know that you're all about the divine feminine and balancing all this stuff out and exploring the pagan stuff. Peterson would have a fucking explosion, wouldn't be able to handle it. Oh no, the dragon of the feminine is coming to destroy us. Meanwhile, right. Neal is there bent over worshiping.
Well, he actually in here somewhere, I'm trying to find it. There's actually a chart in here where so the thing about Peterson that I thought was smart at the time, but now I see it's kind of like, I don't know if I want to call it childish, but like it's a very immature worldview where everything is black and white. It's very dualist. It's very, female is dark, male is light, left. It's literally black and white thinking. Like bad, evil, and good. Chaos, order. Female, male. Destruction, salvation. There's no in between. There's no gray area. The gray area is the magic, and that's the logos. The gray area, the reason, is in the middle of that shit. So I totally disagree with everything that's in this book today. Everything.
Neal sounds like a wizard. He sounds like a wizard, doesn't he? It's fantastic. I wish I had heard a word. I wish I had heard a word out of Jordan Peterson's mouth, but I've never actually listened to him. I don't know. I can't even follow where you're going, but influences. Can I ask Neal a question about his influences when he's...
Look at this. Yahweh,
Please.
Spirit of God. And then it says matter, the void and the deep. And he's got a picture of a woman with a baby as matter, because matter is mother. That's evil. Matter is evil. Women are evil. Yahweh is spirit. Yahweh is salvation. That's Jordan Peterson. That's what this whole book sums up to.
Okay. That's I don't want to know anymore. That's it.
No, go ahead, ask though. I'm curious to know what you're going to ask.
No. I was going to tie it back into that, and I have no interest in that whatsoever.
Yeah, it's really bad. It's really bad. It is. I'm just
two more of your questions, Dion.
Sorry. If you like Jordan Peterson, fine. Cool. But I'm just saying, it's really not that high level shit that it's portrayed as. It just isn't.
Well, it's good that we incorporate our past, good or bad, and we embrace it, because that's what makes us who we are today. That's why I'm just asking. We're going to ask weird questions, ask each other weird questions. Why not? It's the tough questions. And here's another tough question out there. I know Ammon has spent time in Israel, and I know Neal has spent time in Israel as well. A lot of people think that Ammon is anti-Semitic because he challenges Hebrew text. What could you say anything about that in your relationship to Israel and Jewish people?
Yeah, I'd love to answer this question. I lived in Israel for over a year with Israelis working on a dig at Tel Megiddo. It's the same dig that Finkelstein was associated with. Just a seminal moment in archaeological history that I was fortunate enough to be just like at the day laborer's level, right? I just finished my classics degree. All I was doing was moving dirt, right? But we did that for over a year. One full archaeological season, and then I worked and took a little bit of Hebrew while I was there. And and the thing people don't realize, most Israelis, I don't know how to put this, but most Israelis that I was around, and I made lots of friends, most of those Israelis were secular. They didn't care of anything for any religion. And not only that, but they hated what they called were the doti. So Israelis always complaining to me, doti. I'm just trying to practice my Hebrew with them, right? And they're like, shut up, speak English, right? And they're okay. And they're complaining about the doti, what they call the penguins. And I was like, what's a penguin? And they said, oh, it's the religious people because they dress a certain way and blah, blah, blah. Right. And they said they're trying to overthrow the democratic government. So the Israelis that I lived with and worked with were all about democracy and not about things that you would think that, stereotypes don't work when you're actually in the midst of a situation. When you're there with the reality, the stereotypes don't work. So I worked with a lot of Israelis, and I worked with a few Palestinians as well. And oh God, one day I gave, never mind, I better not talk about stuff like that. But I had a lot of fun. I think anybody who would say something, he's anti-Semitic, they're doing that because what I'm revealing from the text clearly contradicts their religious narrative, right? And it makes me, therefore, the enemy, not of Judaism or Jewish people, but of the extremists who supported burying a narrative that was false through time to take control, to justify taking control of possessions and territory. Historically, that what I'm talking about is a threat to that narrative. So anybody who's supporting that narrative, and this includes Christians, if the narrative of the Old Testament falls, and I'm not talking about was Moses real, I'm talking about the story or the belief that people have out there that this thing was originally written way long time ago. The first 5 books by Moses, at least 1000 BC. No. None of that is real. If none of that is real, and the Old Testament is a 3rd century fiction, which linguistically it is, then it undercuts the narrative of both religious Orthodox Judaism and Christianity.
Right.
And if you want to throw Islam in there, I don't know, they're people of the book too.
Right.
So
I want to point this out, okay, because a lot of people miss the philosophical argument that's at the heart of the issue, okay? Besides the linguistics and the fighting about the Bible, there is a philosophical core here that people miss. You do say it, but the issue is monism. It's monism almost versus animism. Ammon and Neal and I, and even Dion, we are far more interested in returning to the ancient primordial roots, the tribalism, the Pulaskian isms, going back to the animist, the idol, the necromancy, the ancestor worship, right? That kind of a root. There's this philosophical monism, this universalism that comes as a rise of high culture that it gets really problematic, right?
So Dion, no. The answer is no. Not anti-Semitic, false history. We need the real focus here needs to be on the reality. I mean, think about it for a minute. We gave the bus over to the cults, and the cults rewrote the history. And that's one thing I really liked is Finkelstein and the guy from Haifa that Neal interviewed, who also worked at Tel Megiddo and knows how important it is.
There's a lot of people like that over there.
Those people all knew that you have an archaeological site, and into that archaeological site, there infiltrates religion. We're going to say that building is the building of Solomon. Well, what's going to make you think that? Does it say that it is? Does somebody who's writing about it say that it is? Is it something? No. We have to promote that 3rd century Torah. We have to promote that 3rd century Septuagint. So this is, and they know, those archaeologists, they know this is not, there's nothing that says we have no evidence. Just think about this for a minute. We have no evidence for the existence of Moses. We have no evidence for the existence of David. You can go off and just name them all. And there is no historical, which for ancient documents, people are like, well, how do you know anybody exists? Dude, Julius Caesar existed because everybody's writing about him. He's writing himself. He's got writing all over the monuments talking about him, right? So there's no question about their existence, but there's no independent evidence to support this. So is that anti-Semitic? I suppose people would want to try to push it that way because they want to try to take down. It's an attempt to take down access to this knowledge.
Okay, good answer. Good. So, Neal, I'm going to have to ask you the same thing.
All right.
You spent time in Israel?
Of course. I spent a whole month in Israel. I hung out with rabbis in there. People we disagree with things.
Tell us what you think. Tell us what you think about that.
I love Israel. I love Jewish people. I'm critical of the narrative that the Old Testament is some ancient, going back to the time of Noah type of mentality, which some people suggest that. I'm not kidding, not scholars, but some people suggest that the Arthur-Hasis and Epic of Gilgamesh proves that Noah was real because they're rewriting the Noah story in this other language. But anyways, I'm critical of Judaism. I'm critical of not people practicing Judaism, critical of Judaism as being the true history of civilization, of that becoming. And the reason why I'm holding this book in my hand right now is exactly what I'm about to explain right now. This is the Annals of the World by James Ussher, written in the 17th century. And what does this guy do? Look how big this giant book is. What this guy does is he takes all these ancient sources. He takes Herodotus. He takes Xenophon. He takes Thucydides. He takes Pausanias. He takes Josephus. He takes the Bible. He takes all these sources and he cuts them all up and he divides them up and he puts the Old Testament in the beginning with Josephus and he throws that in the beginning and then he puts Herodotus and Thucydides and Xenophon and all these ancient sources in the middle and then the New Testament stuff in the end. It makes it appear like that's the way history has been passed down to us. I thought this was the case for so long. This is what I'm taught when I'm growing up. Even not just in the Bible, not just in church, but just people just, oh yeah, in the ancient world, it was the Israelites are these ancient civilization that predates everything. And then the Greeks came later. Just recently, I had one of these SBL scholars that I'm talking to in a private chat. And she said to me, oh, by the way, you mentioned the Orphics. You asked me if I think the Orphics had any influence on the Genesis story. She goes, isn't that bizarre for you to look towards the Greeks? Shouldn't you be looking at the Near East for the Babylonian, Sumerian stuff? She goes, the Greeks are way later. This is the mentality of people. They just think Greek, because the New Testament's Greek, it's new. Because the Old Testament's Hebrew, it's old. That is a false paradigm that needs to be shattered.
Most people don't even know who the bloody Pelasgians are, and that is the earliest form of European writing.
But
one of the earliest human civilizations.
Orphism shows up as soon as, Homer mentions Orpheus. The pre-Socratics are all call themselves Pythagoreans and Orphics for the most part. Pythagoras, obviously, before Pythagoras, they're Orphics. After Pythagoras, they're Pythagoreans, right? And so we're talking about Genesis, Moses, Noah, and Jacob being way after this, centuries and centuries after all this stuff goes down. For me to suggest that there could be influencing from the Orphism to Genesis is not crazy at all. In fact, the oldest Jewish sources we have from Alexandria thought that Moses was the teacher of Orpheus. Just saying what they thought.
Just remember that Judaism is oracular worship. That's why they build a tent where God can speak to them. They're doing oracular worship that's reflected from the 3rd century and all the reinvigorated interest in Alexandria among the scholars of oracular worship. And they're using the same terms for what they're building in the wilderness. And that's why Plutarch, we have ancient priest, head priest of Apollo. He's saying at Delphi, he's saying, hey, Judaism is Bacchic worship. Let me show you how. And he breaks it. He starts to break it down. Then there's a big lacuna in the text. Neal, you saw that.
Right. But isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy how a PhD Bible scholar has no idea that all this pre-Socratic Orphic stuff is early Iron Age into the classical period, and that she just assumes Old Testament Hebrew should be in a category with the Copper Age text. And
they're so stuck in their own field. It's so ridiculous.
Bizarre.
Just to give a shout out here, we have a really good friend named Gunk Wretch. You can find them on academia.edu. They wrote a book on this very subject called Magic Carpets, talking about all of the various Near Eastern hotboxing rituals involving carpets and tents. It's first attested in the Scythian, but it's all across the Near East and North Africa. Right. Everywhere. They're digging holes, they're putting tents over them, and they're smoking tons of weed to the point they see and hear God.
And besides that, the tent itself, we're going to be going tomorrow. We're actually doing an episode in the daytime on the same channel with Ryan Seven from England and Jevim, and we're going to be showing pictures of the tents, the Skene tents, how it relates to the Skenes clan, how it relates to the theaters, how the original Greek theater had a tent on stage, and that same tent is the tabernacle, but it's the dye in the tent itself, the fabric, the colors of the tent are hallucinogenic. The rituals that take place with the tent, with women, it's all up in the Bible. We've talked about it before, and that's what people are talking. And that brings me to my next question, dealing with the burning purple. And Ammon, people are curious. Are you on acid, mushrooms, all these weird drugs? You tried all that stuff?
I'm glad you said that, because I'm glad you asked that question, because it came up in a previous talk that I had with Neal, and I didn't want to mislead my audience. I do not partake in any sort of, people have been saying this guy's on meth, and I don't understand. Do I have the appearance? No, of course I don't. I know people who are on it. Yeah, I've worked with them here in the community, and I can tell you for a fact, that's just stupid. That's from somebody who doesn't.
You can't sit for 4 hours in an interview with one person on meth. It's impossible.
Yeah, without at least scratching myself once or twice, if not 500 or 600 times. No, come on. No. So the answer is no to your
You're
meth.
a good Christian boy, aren't you, Ammon?
No, that I would say now that's half the story. That's half the story. Have I tried things? Of course I have tried things, right? Of course I have. It's just a matter of, matter of nature. After all, I'm reading about all of these drugs and whatnot. And somebody actually came to me one day and said, they knew that I was the author of The Chemical Muse. And they came to me and said, you should have some experience in all of this stuff. And no, so I've, experimented and whatnot. But the other half of the equation is I walk the Scythian way. I hold I hold the star in my hand. And that bathing, that Scythian bathing, to say skoufidzo in Greek means this dude is intoxicated, high, and has a shaved head. Right? This is the way. This is the way. And I follow the way. Those cleansings of those simple plant buds, those are absolutely a part of not just a medical regimen, but also a part of a religious cultural movement that was really what gave the spark to Bacchic worship. And your friends in India, your friends in India are gonna understand the Scythian way. So when we talk about the throne on satanic, doing some satanic initiation, that's exactly what we're trying to invoke.
You want to hear something funny? I'm going to bring this up now. This is the perfect time to bring this up. One of the people who are publicly trying to push this narrative that Ammon and I are anti-Semitic or whatever, and then saying that Ammon has some sort of a pedo ring in Mexico. I'm not kidding. This is what they said. By the way, this is like a legal type of slander, just making shit up type of nonsense. This particular person, and calling him a grifter too, right? Ammon's not even monetized. His books, he gives you free PDFs. Ammon's not selling anything. There's zero grifting happening. By the way, this person who's pushing this in the public sphere, who got blocked by MythVision's forum for doing this, not for doing this, but for just being he was so aggressive to Derek to get me in trouble that Derek blocked him. Anyways, long story short, this person happens to be selling books that literally in the introduction say it's one of these Roman Prov guys, right? creating Christ. This book, literally in the introduction, says that Judaism was some ancient was a sect of terrorism in the first century that needed to be tricked by the Romans by creating these gospels that secretly make them worship the Caesar, Vespasian, and that they think the Messiah is one of their own, but really it's the Roman Emperor Vespasian. And these terrorists were tricked, and that's how we got Christianity. So that person is calling us anti-Semitic, when this person is the one, literally, Jacob Berman's pushing this shit too.
This makes Richard Carrier sound freaking sane. What? I can't follow this. What do you mean that they're a terrorist cell that worships?
Jacob Berman doesn't understand how Roman names work. He doesn't understand what a gens is or what a title, because in one of Paul's texts it says, meet my kinsman Herodian. That's a first name. There's 1 million people named Herodian in the first century that are Greek. It's a not common Greek name. We have an author named Herodian in the 2nd century who writes about Elagabalus, 3rd century. And by the way, that's like saying Michael Johnson is related to Michael Jackson because their name's Michael. Dumbass. These people they have no grasp on history, and they're the ones arguably pushing anti-Semitic rhetoric, talking about
Neal,
terrorist Sicarii, a bunch of dagger-wielding Sicarii terrorists that needed to be tricked, but so that the Romans could take over the Judea. That's what they're pushing.
Yeah, all right. So you've taken it in another direction that we're going to go into, which is other internet personalities.
Yeah.
Other YouTube personalities and figures.
But they're selling that crap. Ammon's not selling anything.
Right. And there's people out there that have beef with both you and Ammon over the information, and they try to profit off that as well. I find it ironic that the people that have beef with y'all like to get the money off it.
Right.
And
they're jealous. That's what it is.
And I'm watching some of the videos. There's different takedown videos on both of you. That's what's, I'm here talking to two gentlemen that have takedown videos. Hopefully one day I don't have one of those for me. Ammon, do you know Kip Davis is?
Yes, I've met him once. Yeah.
Okay. And I looked at his arguments, and it's heady stuff. It goes over my head, because I'm not fluent in Greek. So how can I say who's right or wrong in this? But his argument talks about one thing is that you use medical Greek, a form of medical Greek. And at first that this argument would seem like it's a lesser form of Greek, but it might be even more sophisticated. And that it's
no, hang on, Dion. This is new to me. I've never heard. You mean I have studied ancient medicine for the last 35 years, but I've never heard that there's something called medical Greek.
All right. And what this is, it's based on Galen. Galen's all right. So when people interpret Greek into the English language, sometimes we'll get multiple meanings for words. You have a habit that this is what people will say of picking the most obscure form of the word, and that you use terms from obscure medical texts to validate all your wacky theories about Christianity and Judaism. What form of Greek have you studied? I just want to know.
Yeah, the only form, ancient Greek, in several different dialects over a period of 3,000 years. So let me just start by saying there is no such thing as medical Greek. Medical Greek doesn't exist. Okay. When you're looking, what the difficulty that we're having here is in Laestace is the absolute perfect illustration, right? What he's doing by saying, he's picking one of the minor definitions. It shows, number one, they're kindergarten. They don't understand how to use a lexicon. Number two, it shows that they don't have a knowledge of anything outside of their primary core, which is the New Testament. Because the perfect example is you could say, what Ammon is doing is he's picking a very, very, obscure meaning of Laestace. And that obscure meaning is a child trafficker, right? Just like they do with the Sindon. Oh, the bandage that was wrapped on the naked child's private parts in the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus Christ in Mark 14, 51 and 52, that was a garment. And Ammon is saying it's a very specialized bandage. And of course, that's a medical term. So it must be a medical Greek. You can see him like a kindergarten kid in the corner trying to figure out what to do to answer this unanswerable question. We have an entire document by Lucian that defines what a Laestace is. It's if Kip Davis really wants to get to the reality of the text, he should go read Lucian. And when Lucian defines, in the very beginning of the work, he says, it's in Alexander the False Prophet, and he says, look, historians don't, and by the way, at this time, how many Hebrew historians are there? 0, right? There's no Hebrew. Doesn't exist. That's a myth. There are no Hebrew historical texts. They don't exist. What happens? What happens? How do you get short-circuited like that, right? If Kip really wants to find that real history, let him read Lucian. Let him read the sources. And Lucian says in the very beginning of the work, Alexander the False Prophet, he says, hey, historians don't like to bring out all the negative aspects of human existence. They like to focus on the heroes. And that's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
David reminds me of like a hero character because a lot of these Greeks are claiming to be sons of Heracles or the Heraclidae. We're the sons of the house of David. Right. I think there's something similar going on there. And just real quick, let me just throw something out there because
wait, let me finish. Let me finish, Neal, or it's gonna leave my brain. In just the very first few paragraphs, he says, hey, this time I'm going to talk about one of the terrible types of people, the Laestace. And from then on, it's just page after page of a portrait of what Jesus was saying he wasn't. Happens to be a religious dude involved with drugs and children. Surprise.
That is a crazy text. That is a crazy text.
I just also remember
everyone really should read the False Prophet by a False Prophet Alexander. That really is a classic example of 2nd century Greek.
So Neal,
can I say something? I have to say something. I have to clarify something. This is another thing that gets misrepresented by what I'm saying, and Ammon, you can agree with me. I think you'll agree with me here. When I'm saying that the Hebrew Old Testament is a later invention or whatever, and a later, it's dated to later than we think. When I say that, I'm not saying that Israel didn't exist and that there aren't real kings of Israel, that there isn't a Jerusalem. Of course, I'm not saying that like the whole thing's just completely made up like Narnia. I'm not saying that either. All I'm talking about are the texts that we have in the form that we have it. That's it. It's very simple. Because a lot of people think I'm doing some sort of Israel mythicism thing, that Israel itself doesn't exist. No, hell no. That's nonsense. So I'm just trying to make sure that's clear. Because a couple people did think that I was trying to say that, which I never was.
Well, that's why we're here today. That's why we want to ask tough questions. This is not for views. The algorithm ain't gonna like this. But
and by the way, Ammon will agree with me. He's been to Tel Megiddo. He knows he's right.
This brings me up. But yeah, this brings up a really big thing I want to address, though. And I want to do this in a kind of a politically correct way. So what I want to do is I want you to address the controversy, but we don't need to name names. Anyone who's interested can look on YouTube and they'll find who it involves. But there has been an ongoing controversy between mostly Neal, but Ammon is also somewhat a part, about this idea of the pagan origin of certain holidays. Yeah. And Neal, your name has been completely run through the mud in certain forums, in certain videos by certain people.
Really?
And it's gotten really mudslinging.
I didn't know that. I do.
Yeah. Well, just something I've seen about like people talking about how you are pro-pagan and that you have that you're the same way that you say that the Christians are biased, and they're saying that there is a connection, that there isn't a connection between like Saturnalia and Christmas. There are people in some of these discords who are saying stuff about how you're biased in the other way.
I am biased.
And you're conflating.
I am biased in the other way. And the reason why I'm biased is because I see there's no attention at all being drawn to the thousands of sources and all this data to suggest that the winter solstice was already important way before Christianity comes along. I point out a lot of the sources that talk about how there's a god named Ion being born at the winter solstice by a virgin named Kori. There's another one in Arabia named Dusaris, born of a virgin named Kubaba. And there's sources from, I got blocked for bringing this one up, for showing where someone made a video saying, oh, there's no sources about Horus being born on December 25th. And then some other person, it wasn't even me. I wasn't even gonna. I usually don't comment on these videos. I usually just watch them. I disagree with them. I just go on with my day. I don't really care. But then I saw something interesting here. Somebody pointed out, hey, there's a source here from Plutarch. It says this, McClellan responded with, "This is misinformation. This is wrong." And I'm like,
wait, you said a name.
Yeah. Fine. I'm just bringing up. You asked me a question on the Christmas thing, so I'm just responding to it. This is not like something I really care too much about, but just to respond, just to tell you what happened. He responds to this person. This person sends him a source about Plutarch, suggesting that Harpocrates, which is Horus the child in Greek, was born at the winter solstice, around the winter solstice. That's what it says. And he just responds with, "This is wrong and misinformation." And then I'm sorry, that's not what he said. He said, he says the winter solstice is not December 25th. And that's when I go, whoa, he doesn't even realize that the winter solstice used to be December 25th when Plutarch wrote this. So then I pointed that out to him. And then but it says around the winter solstice. So there can't be a suggestion. We already know why the Christians chose it. The calculation theory. By the way, there's a lot of holes with the calculation theory. That's another thing I talk about in my video too. But I grant that calculation theory. What I'm saying is the calculation theory comes after the celebrations were already taking place around the winter solstice, just as Plutarch suggests. So whether it's on the winter solstice or around the winter solstice, whether it's January 6th, January 5th, December 23rd, December 28th, I don't give a shit. The point is, though this time of the year was already a huge deal to every major city in the Roman Empire at that time.
Yep. And you pointed this out in your Danny interview.
The calculation just pinpoints it to a certain date, which happens to fall on the winter solstice at that time period, by the way. But I'm just saying, all I'm doing is saying, look, there's a lot of precedent for the winter solstice celebrations. The Greater Dionysia was celebrated at the winter solstice for Dionysus. Then you have down in Egypt, there's another the Horus thing, obviously. But anyways, you got what's it called? I can't remember the name of it. It's an ancient Greek. It's not called the Chronia. That's another one. The Chronia predates the Saturnalia, and then there's another Greek one. It's literally the week of the winter solstice. They're celebrating and they're giving gifts. So this whole Christmas.
You have a whole video on this. So
I have a whole video on this, and look.
But
people just don't want to look at it. They just want Christmas to be sacred and special, and they want it to be the gift giving. That's just what we do in every single holiday.
And they want to deny the big elephant in the room. You pointed this out in your Danny Jones interview, and I really loved what you said because you gave a perfect example in England where the Romans go into the freaking temple, they just remove the demon, the idol, and now it's a church.
That's what they've been. That's the playbook of Christianity.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? So you said McClellan, Dan.
Yeah.
So he made a video on Ammon too. Right. He has videos on both. He's a busy character.
Well, no, he hasn't done anything on me. He hasn't done anything on me. He doesn't respond to anything I say. I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't have an answer or a rebuttal for it. He doesn't say anything to me. Ever.
You're not jealous, are you, Neil?
Maybe I am. I don't know. But look, we had a back and forth on X, and then as soon as we get to the area, like we'll go back and forth. As soon as I expressed the argument, and he sees it, he just stops responding.
Oh, this is on X,
I would bet
formerly Twitter. Yes,
I would bet you $1 million. He's telling other people, "Oh, I just don't want to deal with him. He's annoying." No, you just don't have a fucking answer, dude. Straight up, because you have time to answer to Ammon twice. You had time to comment on his video, the one that I was in, but you can't say shit about. You haven't said shit.
Sources disagree with him, Neil, and he's an academic. What can he do?
Internet beef. That's what this is about. And so
I think that is he got.
But guys, so we're coming up just past the hour mark. I want to bring on our good friend, Lady Jevim. She's been taking a bunch of questions from the audience and has a couple questions from Discord that she wants to ask Ammon and Neal. So we're going to bring on Lady Jevim. Everyone say hi, Lady Jevim.
I live, Jevim.
Hey.
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted there, Jevim. Oh.
Okay, hi. Okay, hi, you all. Congratulations with Annie Jones. That's amazing.
That was
amazing. Fun. It's amazing seeing the people come in and ask the questions, and to be able to help them is just the greatest thing in the world for me. So to be able to ask you the questions from the community is very inspirational to me. And I'll get right to it, okay? Okay. This one is from, I call him Sir Gandhi. Okay. He says, in the first line of Apollodorus's epitome, there is an obscure reference to I think it's Phionan, which is translated to gray female sow. My question is, does the line hide something of the right within it somewhere?
Gandhi.
Okay.
Gandhi, you remind me of a group of graduate students, right? Yeah, it's a good question. Is there something of the right in that? You can argue that there is. What's the important question would then be, just to kind of push things forward, would then be, what eidolon are you pulling out, right? How is this part of the right? When you talk about something like Io and all of the connections linguistically to the cult through Io, you could do the same thing with this particular passage. So yeah, this is a great question. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, the second one is from someone that sent in an email, and it's a little bit long, but it's really good. Okay. Any sources, thoughts, theories on the use of amber electrons, spelled with a K, in the mystery cults? It was a highly traded item, and the proven practical use of the static charge obtained by rubbing it has been found in Syrian whorls on drop spindles to attract wool. I also find it very interesting that at least one of the mollusk in Tyrian purple 6,6 oh, it's a dibrom. It's a really long scientific word. I apologize. Is an excellent semiconductor and, as I've read, less alien to the human body than silicon. Now, if you want me to spell that word, I can. It's actually DIBROMOINDIGO. So it's dibrom indigo.
It's a whole new form of drug category that kids are getting into nowadays. Just so you know, when you type it in.
And you mean like 18-year-old kids, like over, right? You're not talking about like, yeah, okay. Just making sure we're not.
I'm an old man. Yeah, kids are 20-year-olds to me.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
If that's your, I have no idea how to answer that question. Ammon might though. That person sounds like they know more about it than I do. So
Wait,
whoever wrote that knows more about this shit than I do.
dude, I am so glad you said that, because I was like, my mind went back to Gilligan's Island. I was like, oh, somebody shut this nerd up. You know what I mean? Professor, what are you talking about?
Whoever wrote that we should be asking them about that shit. You know, I don't know.
These are called bromides, bromides, bromoindole categories. People are researching a whole form of drug categories you could do with it. In the spirit of like T-Cal, Fecal, which is Alexander Shulgin analogs. And so you could take a drug class and you could generate a whole bunch of analogs off it. And that's what the people are doing with the bromoindole. And they're also looking at it in terms of its colors, and see what it is that the tannins and the colors in the dyes are usually psychoactive. That's what we're talking about, the tints and stuff. And so that's a pretty heady question there. But
I know,
so,
right?
so the Baltic amber, it's a form. It's heavily traded. Like I said, Baltic. That's one of the main regions of amber around the world that it's famous for. It takes years to make it, and you could use it also for perfumes as a aromatherapy. It works as a aphrodisiac for both male and female, and there is a static electrical charge that can be generated off of rubbing. That is correct.
I'd call that Acme, wouldn't you?
Dion needs credit. Look, that's who the good answer. I say what he said.
Okay. Okay, moving on. This one's for Neal. Okay, from the watchers. What type of issues have you faced when and up to this day, I guess, when you started to take Ammon's work to your following in the larger public?
Oh, you get a lot of bullying. That's what it is. You get a lot of how do I say this? A lot of dogmatic academics that are trying to bully you into, at least for me, bully me into distancing myself from Ammon, or else I'm going to be on some sort of blacklist for SPL or something. Like, oh, unless you start to distance yourself from Ammon, you're going to be on a list, and then no one's going to talk to you, and then you're going to tarnish your legacy. And so that literally has happened. And then look, what really bothers me about a lot of these SPL people who are like this and only look at the Bible and don't look at any of the history. They don't look at any of the other mythologies. They don't look at any of the. They don't even look at Roman history or Greek history or Scythian history or Egyptian history. They're just like this on the Bible. And then for some reason, they think having all this knowledge in this one area gives them all this expertise in all these other areas. And it doesn't.
Right.
And it's like that. I've noticed that all I'm doing is I'm taking Ammon's scholarship as another tool, as another outlet for all the stuff that I'm looking at. James Frazier gets shitted on. This is another person who I recently, one of these scholars got asked about dying and rising gods, and this person said they don't exist. And I'm like watching this interview, and I'm like, why doesn't he tell them about Romulus, Dionysus, Tammuz, Eshmun, Adonis, Attis, Hyacinthos, Persephone, Ishtar? That's just on the top. There's 9 of them. I just named on the top of my head. I can go on and on and on and on and on. Right? Why doesn't he bring this up? And he just goes, "Oh, they don't exist. Oh, okay. Next question." But the person was like, "That's just a category that was made up by James Frazier." James Frazier, if you look up his works, he was translating Apollodorus. By the way, the standard translation in English of Apollodorus, the library, is from James Frazier. James Frazier's translating the Greek that you're using, that I'm using. You think he has some fucking say in if a dying and rising God exists or not? This dude did way more fucking shit than you did. And you're just gonna these people, they have no idea what they're talking about. They say things that are just subjectively false. You can prove them wrong objectively, and then they just go on with their day not caring, because the way they do their scholarship is, are other scholars agreeing with him? Oh, they look around. You can give them an argument. The argument can be good. They just look around first. Do my colleagues agree? Oh, my colleagues don't agree, so I can't accept that argument. And then 6 months later, when someone like Gad Barnea comes on and has the same argument, all of a sudden now it's groundbreaking shit. That's groundbreaking shit. Because another PhD came along, he checks the boxes that I'm looking for. It's like they don't look at the arguments. They look at this. They look to see if other scholars agree or not. That's backwards. That's dogma.
It's the corruption of academia. It's the corruption via greed of academia. And if you're going to keep your circus going, then you've got to be able to take down people who have new takes on the evidence, right? You got to take them down. Right. And, it's a defensive move. Academia is like that, but they're killing themselves by being like that.
Now, I got to ask you a question, Ammon. Is it not true that when you published the work back in the day, somebody came forward and totally detracted it, said it was shit, said it was nothing, and that person today is now pushing that same content? That's the backbone of that person's content. I'm not going to say their name. I'm not saying it. It's on the tip of my tongue.
That is correct, and that should surprise nobody, because that's how academics work, right? Right away you poo-poo, and then when you realize it's legitimate, you claim it for yourself, right? You sully it first, you stain it first, and everybody steps back from it. And then when you can see the reality of it, then it's mine. And that's exactly what's happening. If you don't believe me, check out my Bryn Mawr classical review. That's what you should do. Back when they were saying, oh no, nobody was using drugs, right? Stupid. It's just stupidity.
By the way, James Fraser translated 5 volumes of Ovid. He translated 2 books from Pausanias that we still use in our libraries today, and he translated the whole entire library of Apollodorus. So I think this guy is pretty authoritative when it comes to do dying and rising gods exist or not.
Also, I just want to point out people like Ruck who have been talking about this forever, and people have always. I don't understand. Okay, so when I was in university, I did a double major, religion studies and anthropology. If you look on the anthropology side, Richard Evans Schultes, Greg Wassoon, these people are giants. They are respected. They are beloved for their research. But Ruck, within the classical world, he's writing with these people. They're collaborating. Yet, and it's based on Ruck's. He is a part of this discovery. Yet he doesn't get credit until the bloody freaking 90s. What? Why is the classical world, Ammon, so rigid?
It's because it's a bunch of people competing to exist within the university system, and they have certain things that they're expected to do. You think university professors are about teaching you? No, they're not. There are those of us who hold the art sacred, who abandoned that professorial approach, and we're renegades, bro. When you get a professor like that who doesn't care about all of the slots that they should fill as a professor, you're in trouble. You've got a magnet, potentially a real magnet. Those professors end up doing a great thing. I was with Barry Powell, who's famous for his mythology course, and he wrote the textbook, of course, and it's very popular. Barry Powell, I was one of his TAs, so I have like 150 of his 700 students, something like that. And we're in the elevator, and he looks at me and he says, you're not afraid of me like everybody else. And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, why is that? And I said, because you're just a mortal, man. Right? Mm-hmm. And that was the attitude of the professor has to be in a certain, that was totally disrespectful for me to do that. I was standing outside of the university model. This is classics. I can only talk about what I know and have experienced. This is classics, right? And you have to remember, Snappy Classics is tiny. When we had 1,300 students for Greek, that is at a big university with 50,000 students, you will have probably a department of 20, maybe 25 classicists. That's it. So, it's a small pie that everybody is trying to get a piece of. And if you stand outside it, if you just look at the training for the sake of the training, which is what I did, there was that muse. And you've got to follow. I just knew it's that muse and that muse alone. And when you follow that course, it pulls you away from the money and the circus and all that kind of stuff. That's just my ramblings. I'll stop.
Hey, Ammon,
Largest Greek
I gotta
class
ask
in the world.
I want to ask you a real quick question because you're talking about academia and teaching and your teachers and teaching students. I want to know about this Minnesota scandal. I want to know what happened. I read that
Minnesota scandal.
You assaulted
Was there a scandal in
students.
Minnesota?
I heard that you did a performance play and assaulted students on stage, and there was a priest in the audience, and all kinds of crazy stuff happened. And that's part of what's going viral.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah. I made sure I put.
He's frozen.
We lost him. I also want to address another conspiracy that came
hold
up.
that thought for now. Yeah, go to the next one. We'll go back to it.
Yeah, so there's one thing I want to talk about because there's been a bunch of conspiracies involving Ammon and discords, and I want to set the record straight, okay? I am a huge magic nerd. I started a Discord called the Ordo Serpentis Rose as a way for us all to chat, a private Discord for us to talk about magic and initiation. And, it wasn't anything super serious, and we wound up getting rid of it because everyone was busy. But there are a few butthurt people.
Right.
There are a few butthurt people who didn't get to come to those private discussions, who are now going on to all these videos and saying that Ammon has a cult of followers and all this stuff. No,
you know what's funny about that?
Private Discord that I made.
No, the funny part about that is those are the people that are in all of his chats, watching him in every video, commenting on all his videos, and every 5 seconds. They're the ones who are the cultists. They're the ones who follow Ammon the most.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
Yes.
We know who we're
So,
talking
Ammon, tell me about this performance that took place at a college. You were a professor, and you kidnapped students or something, and you made them do things on stage, and you were on drugs, and you were giving drugs to all the students, and I don't understand it.
I got
He waved giant phalluses at the audience and threatened to sexually assault them.
Can I share?
Yeah.
It's in the newspaper. I found newspaper clippings.
Yeah, I got a really
but it doesn't say that.
I got a really good article about this. Can I show it? It's written by a lawyer. It's written by a PhD lawyer, or not a PhD, whatever the lawyer. What does the lawyer have again? I don't know.
JD.
Anyway, yeah. So this is written. This is written by Alex Maury, right? Let's just show people who this is. Vice President of Campus Advocacy. Alex Maury is a attorney and a journalist. Approached the campus advocacy. All right, we got we're in some good hands then, I guess. Let's see what she says about this situation. Silenced at St. Mary's, censorship and academia freedom concerns raised after professors firing. 2016. It says at the spring.
Hang on, Neal, before you scroll down, look at the picture. Scroll up to that picture of our stage. Isn't that glorious? What you see there in the middle is Medea, and on the left is a chorus of Furies. Now, that chorus of Furies caused the seminary server to raise it by 3 times, an order of 3, magnitude of 3. Of how many hits in the porn that they got. I know that because the Monsignor had to keep watch on that kind of thing. Yeah. And it was remarkable. It was.
By the way, look how into it they are. You really got them into the classics.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Mm-hmm. This is what a real professor. This is what a professor is supposed to do. Supposed to take them back and get them into this stuff. So, anyways, by the way, I heard that your the request for Ammon, Hillman, Professor Hillman at the school was the slots would be filled up within an hour for every semester. That's what I was told.
Yeah.
That every semester that you were in such high demand that as soon as the university announced that the classes were open, Hillman's classes were filled within an hour. So, anyways, keep that in mind as I read through this.
My last semester we had 9. It was somewhere between 60 and 90, I think, was the final count of people who wanted to get in who couldn't.
Right.
For my class on cult. Fantastic.
And for anyone listening right now, you got to hear this. As the spring semester begins today at St. Mary's University, a storm of controversy is brewing amid allegations that the school unjustly censored a school play, fired the popular professor who wrote it, and is now demanding silence from students and faculty critical of the administration. One thing is certain. Numerous St. Mary's students and faculty who work with Professor David Hillman, they tell Fire that they want people to know that the man they call a dedicated and brilliant scholar who got students excited about the classics. It's a total loss for the university, says Judy Myers, a theater and dance professor who directed Medea, a Virgin's Voice, last fall, who hired Hillman, an adjunct classics instructor, to write the original translation of the script. Students love him, Myers said of Hillman. He gets great ratings. He gets along really well with the faculty that surround him and students who were enrolled in his classes, ready to take the classes next year, see? Dorothy Deal, chair of the Modern and Classical Languages Department and Hillman's boss, agreed. Hillman's own boss agreed. She called him an excellent professor. Never before in the 16 years that I've been at St. Mary's have I seen such interest in Latin and Greek as there has been since he joined the department. Medea, which St. Mary's newspaper, The Cardinal, look at this Catholic shit, The Cardinal called a dark and a moving story of greed, faith, and a mother's love, follows the story's namesake as she seeks vengeance for her husband's corruption by murder. That's the story of Medea. But Hillman, a single father of 2, who also worked part-time as the janitor to earn extra income, said he was ousted from the small liberal arts school in the small southeastern Minnesota town of Winona after administrators grew uncomfortable with the play's message.
Yeah, let me fill in a couple of interesting details. So you'll notice that I became a janitor. Dorothy, who was my supervisor that you just quoted, she came to me one day and she said, I went to the university and said, you're not paying this guy enough, right? You've got to pay him more. He needs a raise, right? And they said, no, let him get a job. We'll give him one. Mm-hmm. And so she said, if you want, you can take them up on their dare. Because essentially it's a slap in the face, right? My students, it's hilarious. My students would sit in my classroom and, everything full, people waiting to get in. My students would sit there and leave. And I would have to go off after lectures and clean their toilets. And I thought when they offered me this, I was like, number one, feeding my children is most important. Number one. Number two, I'm going to take them up on it. So it had a really bad play in the student body because they saw an administration publicly debasing a professor. Now, having said that, I got to know the cleaning staff real well, and those were some of the greatest moments I had at St. Mary's. Were, believe it or not, cleaning up the aftermath of a night of drinking and Catholic students strewn on the grass, passed out. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun.
I sent the link in the private chat, Snappy, if you want to put it in the description for people. It's a really long, we're not going to read the whole thing, but you get the point. Like, I think you get the point right there. But if someone wants to read that whole article, I just put it in so Snappy, if you don't mind putting that in the description so that people can look at it. Go ahead.
Something I think that's important that people recognize is that the administration started hunting me. And my vindication, my real vindication came when the head or a representative of the American Association of University Professors, AAUP, two of them actually came out to St. Mary's and did an investigation on my behalf, and came to the conclusion that the university had falsely terminated me and that it was a free speech issue. All of the things that came out of that, like the incubus stories, like the actual Catholic inquiry into my state of demon possession, all of that stuff that was surrounding it was kind of dressing on the performance of Seneca. It was Seneca's Medea, and that I was translating and bringing. And we had these table talks. That picture that I always have in my background, that was painted by one of our students the first day that we had a table talk, and they were introduced to me, the theater students who were going to be playing these parts. We had to have table talks where we sat and I gave them a rundown of the mindset and the history of the characters that they would be portraying. And I did so just with sources, just showed them a source, and they were blown away. And the director took out a group, the chorus of, it was all females, and they took them out and they performed ritual under the moonlight of in the hills, rolling hills of Winona. And this was generating a lot of buzz. There were a whole group of charismatic Catholics who were sending people to my office saying, "We know what you're doing." When the head administrator, he was actually number 2 underneath the president, when he came out and he called me into his office and said, "Look, we know what you're doing." I was like, "No, well, what's going on here? Are you all insane?" And it became apparent right away. And professors were telling me, "Look, you wrote a book about child ritual. I can't say the R word on YouTube, but that you wrote a book about that within the Christian church. What did you think was going to happen to you?" Right now, the funny thing is, when I came to the university, I came to the university and the program was very small, and within a very short period of time, it blew up. And it was magnificent. They had a magnificent teaching. My seminarian students to this day will get in touch with me. Yeah, they will say, "Oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that." Most of my guys are secular right now that are doing that, but those people are good people. And I showed them the Greek. And I don't want to give you the idea that they're writing me every day or anything, but as a matter of fact, I haven't got an email in a long time. But when I left the university, there were tears, which is amazing. It's beautiful to see, to cry with a student, right? Who wants, they want that dope of reality, right? You tell a room full of high school. I taught high school too on the East Coast. You teach a room full of high school girls, Catholic high school girls. You teach them about oracles, and guess what? They're the same age as you. What have you done for us lately? Right? When you show them, you hold up that model to them. Oh God, the parents would come in and conference with me and say, "What have you done to my daughter?" Right?
Question, Ammon. I got a question for you. Have you ever been investigated by the Catholic Church?
Yes, I have.
No.
I can proudly say officially I have an inquiry into my state of demon possession. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go on to next question now, guys. Okay, this one's from Andy, and he insists that I ask. Okay, how many penises does Cerberus have? 1 or 3?
I'd say 3.
All right. I'll pick one. So maybe we'll
One.
meet. Maybe we'll meet in the middle somewhere. Yeah, I
So
don't
like,
remember. In all honesty, Mandy, I don't remember ever seeing a myth about the genitalia of Cerberus, but it does not mean it's not out there.
Right. There could be something. You never know.
I will just add an aside for people because it's fun. Cerberus is huge mystery. Carl Ruck in the Samothracian Mysteries connects Cerberus as an incarnation of Hecate,
Right. The 3-headed.
right? And you need to get past Cerberus in order to get to and from the underworld. This is what the mysteries are all about, right?
And don't forget, he's got that dark spume on his mouth. It's a foam, right? And people don't realize that's also connected with the mystery. And that's through, if you trace it, it's through those half woman, half viper figures like Echidna, right? And Typhon, her husband. That spume. They're always talked about with the spume, the dark purple or black spume. Yeah, it's like, what do these people have on their mouths, right? Beautiful anthropology. Like, yeah, love it, love it.
okay, and let's see. This one I thought was really interesting. Another email said they wanted to ask you about the words Messiah and Cephas in the Gospel of John, specifically chapter 1, verse 41 and 42. In your opinion, are these words Aramaic Hebrew words that have been transliterated, or do they have their own meaning in the Greek language?
Yeah, that's the same thing as Christ, asking about the Christ, because that's where they're saying it's the anointed one, it's the Messiah. No, what's happening is one live language is being impressed upon by a dead language, a liturgical language, and that Mashiach is not a part of the Greek vocabulary. So whatever's happening there with the author is importing that. I'm not going to guess what the root is, whether it's Aramaic, because I'm not a Semitic studies guy. I did take Hebrew, modern Hebrew, but that was just enough to say, hey, where's the disco? So yeah, no, I don't know. Is it? Yeah. All I can tell you is the concept is not. It's being impressed upon the language of the document, which is the Greek text that you're talking about. Definitely. And people try to do that all the time. Look at when Jesus is sitting on the cross and he's right, lama sabachthon, and they're always like, this is Aramaic. Of course it is, because that's what we're trying to promote is Aramaic. Do we have any evidence for that? No. Same thing with the name of the Magdal. It's all the same thing. You can say it until you're blue in the face. This is Aramaic. This is Hebrew. There's no proof for it. You're playing games is what you're doing, right? If the author of the text itself is impressing that, there's a reason that they have to say. Nobody ever asked a simple question. Why do you have to say? In Hebrew, this is Mashiach. Why do you have to do that? Because the language is dead, right? What we're seeing is a world like everybody thinks Jesus walked around speaking Aramaic, or some people have said Syriac.
Yes.
Are you shitting me? Are you that stupid? Do you know where he was educated? In Egypt. And do you know where they were speaking?
Something to say about this, though, because there is a lot of conflicting scholarship on this with Jesus, right? But the Greek is the lingua franca of the area, is it not?
Yeah, it's not only the lingua franca.
I was in Nazareth, and all the archaeology has Greek mosaics everywhere. In Nazareth, Nazareth was probably the most Hellenized city in all of Israel. The north, the Galilee, that's all the most Hellenistic shit ever. That's where Pan's Grotto is. Pan's Grotto.
Right.
So it's whatever. Maybe they were speaking Syriac, but like I would say it's like Florida, where you have people speaking Spanish but also English. I would compare it to something like that.
If he's in Egypt, being raised in Egypt, and he comes back and he's very successful, and the people in the temple are like, in the synagogues are like, oh my God, this he's out there. He knows his stuff, which they did, and he was very young, right? Because he's still a student. When he comes back, that language that he would have been educating himself in would not have been Egyptian. It would not have been Egyptian. It would have been Greek, right? It would not have been Hebrew. Were they being educated in Judea in Hebrew? No. And how do we know that? Because there is nothing left. There are no sources. There are no Hebrew historians.
By the way,
Zero.
by the way,
Zero.
you know what's on the mountain in Nazareth? Mount Nazareth is a mount. It's one of these like hill mountain villages. Right, it's like in the same hub as like Sepphoris, Sepphoris, they call it, and it's a little bit to the west of Tiberias, big city Tiberias. By the way, Roman city at that time, named after Tiberius Caesar. And Caesarea is right is on the coast in Samaria. All this stuff is all Hellenized and Latinized too, like it's Romanized. Anyways, the hill village of Nazareth. Guess what's on there? Not only is there a synagogue with the 12 constellations with Helios on it, but also a fucking theater, and it's called the Theater of Dionysus. That's the name of it. And then me and Derek Lambert took a little walk down the road, just checking out some of the archaeology. And there's the horned Dionysus on the ground with Ariadne. And then on the other side, there's a giant Orpheus mosaic holding his lyre in his hand. That's Nazareth. That's the city that Jesus grew up in. So I'm just saying, I've been there. I saw it with my own eyes. I know what's going on over there. And especially in the first century.
You know, guys, you said Mashiach. I got to just at least throw it in there because we're talking about it tomorrow on the episode. It deals with crocodiles, Sobek, and the anointing of feet with crocodile fat and crocodile sex, acacia and mollusk, and all that kind of goofy stuff. So that's what they're saying, to be anointed. People talk about being anointed with crocodile fat. It was a pharaonic ritual. It dealt with the intuition of, like, the helical rising of Sirius once a year would show up on the Nile, and it would flood, called induation, and all the crocodiles would come out. And they would obtain the fat from the crocodiles, and that's what you would put your spikenard or lilies in, and different. People don't know lard is what you would use to contain perfumes back in the day.
And their poop.
Yeah.
Crocodile no, I've seen the text. I've seen the text with the poop. It's a crocodile poop is a treatment for depression. Isn't that fantastic?
Damn.
It's also a contraceptive.
Yeah, it deals with the lactic acid and with acacia, and you could take and that's what people don't know. Acacia was used as part of the ritual too, but as a contraceptive is crocodile dung. It deals with the pH and lactic acid, and mollusk as well. So these mysteries of the burning purple. So we'll get to that next. Hopefully somebody's going to ask you about the purple.
Ask me? Oh,
Well,
yeah.
I didn't have any questions about the purple, but I will go to the next one. I believe
By the way, real quick, I just want to say I'm about to find. I think I found the video I took of Orpheus's lyre in Nazareth. But go ahead. I'm going to pull it up in a minute.
Okay, so the great guy, he's a great guy. Shout out to Big Tuna. He is the one that started the Reddit group, and there's almost 400 people in there now, and we're maintaining that. He asked if you could tell us more about your time with Professor Scarborough and what kind of influences he had on your work.
Yeah, he had a profound influence on everything that I was doing, and it was a great time. I used to go after classes were over. Dr. Scarborough and I, who, by the way, the real advantage to working with Dr. Scarborough is the fact that he had the medical side as well. He had a very firm grip on the medical side, so he could do the history and the languages, and also kind of go over into the medicine and try to pull out those types of works. And he was working on the drugs just a lot. He's very well published, just an outstanding expert. And he had a great influence on me. I didn't. I went with him. I used to go to class, and then after class, I would go to have drinks with Dr. Scarborough, and that's really when you can get somebody in that tavern environment. That's really when they can release. So I got a lot of, just a lot of good training is what it was, because he was great at what he did. And I went to the University of Wisconsin just to work with him. I went to a meeting where it was between him and von Staden at Yale, and Scarborough was just ahead of the game. And so I went to the University of Wisconsin to work with him. Now, I didn't defend my dissertation the last year with him. There were personal problems and issues that came up. So I ended up defending with Patricia Rosenmeyer. She was the head of my defense. I feel very, I saw him at a meeting years later after I graduated, and he knew what happened in the Chemical Muse, and he knew it blew up, and he knew my committee. See, if the funny thing was, if he had been seated on my committee, they would never have been able to do what they did, not pass it unless I take out the chapter on recreational drugs. They would never have been able to do that. And he would have made sure they didn't, because he had access to all of this evidence. But because he wasn't there, the committee was able to kind of bow to pressure, right? But again, in political, people say, is there political stuff going on in academia? Absolutely, right? And at that time, it was politically bad to write about drug use. It was just a bad thing. So, long story short, John Scarborough was he was one of my favorite people to ever interact with. And there's many times when I don't know how I managed to drag myself through all the vomit to get back home, but I did, and it was a good time. A good time was had by all.
By the way, Scarborough is a legend who translated a whole bunch of the PGM too.
He would sit around and talk about how terrible that translation was. I used to love it.
So you want to see what I found in Nazareth? I have 2 quick videos. I'm going to turn the sound off because it's going to be horrible sound, but we can just talk over it. This is me just filming with my phone in Nazareth, and this is what I found. This is literally in Nazareth. I'm not kidding. Sephori is the bigger city, but right across the town hill of Nazareth is this location right here. It's a very small town. There's a theater. There's a couple of little strips of archaeology where you can see a little village was there, and that's it. It's that small. There's nothing going on there. Here's what it is. So I don't know why James Tabor just kept walking. I'm like, wait, why aren't we? What's like? I want to see this. I want to see what this Greek is. He just keeps going. I don't know. He was looking for some Hebrew shit somewhere. I don't know, but I don't know what he was looking for. But I saw this and I go, wait a minute. That looks like someone with that lyre in his hand. And I walked up here. He just walked right past this giant. What it looks like someone's house. That's what it looks like. It's the outside of someone's house. And so I don't know why I'm acting like an idiot, but I'm walking around like an idiot. All right, here we go. I finally walked up here. And look can you see it? Let me see if I can get a good shot. Look at that. You see the outline of Orpheus? This is Nazareth.
Wow.
That's Nazareth.
Yeah.
That's Orpheus.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
And then check this out. This is another video that I shot. Here's Dionysus. This is called the Theater of Dionysus, what we were standing in. This is the house that's right next to it. So some Roman billionaire at the time, I'm just assuming that's how rich they were, built this house in Nazareth, and they built a theater and a synagogue right next to it. And this is a mosaic with all the scenes from the Dionysica on it.
Mm.
That's what I'm telling you. I looked at every single one of them. It's all scenes from the Dionysica. And you're gonna sit there and tell me that look, that's Heracles. See it in Greek? Heracles. Anyways, my camera was
And
terrible.
They
you know,
were
I just want to
really,
add in
really pagan.
one
Yeah.
fun thing about Medea and Heracles that people always seem to forget. Medea cured Heracles of his curse, right? Heracles winds up in Athens, where she's married to Aegeus, and she cures him.
and she's the only one who is allowed into the Heraclean ritual. When Heracles does his mystery, the only female that's allowed to be there is Medea.
Mhm. So question for y'all. I got cut out for a second. Did you show Orpheus's lyre?
Yeah, did you see it?
No, I cut out, but
Oh
I
yeah, I
know
showed it.
we talk about in
I see
other
it.
videos.
Well, I'll show it to you after.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you one thing is the head attached to the lyre.
That's Orpheus after he dies.
Yes, and it's part of a theme that we'll see of that, like the head of John the Baptist and different saints, their head, the like with Salome, it's that head, and also with Orpheus, there's a famous image that I really love. It's a coin, and it's that coin that shows Orpheus crucified on the mast of a ship as a Bacchic Christ.
Oh, they say that's a that was made by an Italian guy in like the 16th century.
Oh, I love it. Oh,
yeah, it looks good. It's pretty cool.
And that's what I heard too. But where did he get that idea from in the 16th century? That's what I posed the question on the video.
Fascinating shit, though. I like it. Yeah.
Scholars used to push the fact that Orphism made a resurgence after Christianity came around. So a lot of those images that you think, oh, that's maybe Christian, a little bit of Christianity in there or something. A lot of that my generation was trying to figure out how genuine that was. Is this an influence from Christianity now that Orphism is blowing up? And where'd the Satanists go? Right? Because where did that line? Right from Jesus, from the beginning, you have those Satanists. So where do they come from? And they're calling them Satanists. Right? It's in Epiphanius. I'm not kidding you. So yeah, love it.
So we have going in another thread here, dealing with Heracles. I think somebody wanted to know the Garden of Hesperides, if I'm saying it correctly. That was one of the questions. They want to know where the garden was.
Yeah, there was several people very interested in where the Garden of Hesperides was located.
Where you think it's located, Ammon?
Why? Look, this is the third question that I have no clue.
I was there.
No. Look,
no.
There's a lot of speculation, and when you take Homer, part of the course is geography, because you have to look at the geography through their eyes, and this is probably Sicily that they're referring to here. I don't know.
I have a video on my channel. It's one of my members only, because I only put it on there because the quality so bad, so I just threw it up as a members only video. But it's the Garden of Gethsemane. It's right next to a Christian church. Right next to a Christian church. By the way, if you want, this is gonna blow your mind. I should pull the video up. So the Garden of the Gethsemane it's a beautiful looking garden, and you can walk around it. You can't go in the actual the tree. There's old trees that are like 1,000 years old there.
Did you go to the mikveh?
Yes, that was there too. The mikvah, yeah. But when you walk past the garden, you can go inside this church. This old Roman church, Orthodox church that's there.
With the pictures.
But guess what they have inside? They have all the scenes from the Bible in there. One of the scenes is Jesus being arrested with the kid. I'm not kidding. It's in the church. I'm not kidding. I have it. It's in my video.
I also just want to point out before we completely move on from the topic, there is all of this Homeric imagery of the cross as well as the mast of the Argo. You also see it in the Odyssey as the whirring fan. So Odysseus gets this prophecy where he has to go inland and he has to take his mast and strike it in the ground, and it will mark the point, and they call it a fan. And then he has to hang himself upon the fan. And you will see this image all the time of Orpheus, and he's crucified on a cross. but it's not a cross. It's a fan made for like digging through agriculture. It has to do with something with Dionysus and Ammon, you talk about this because it has something to do with the underworld and Poseidon, and it also has to do with Dionysus, but it's so confusing to me.
It's the nautical Christ. The nautical mysteries are part of it.
Can I say about the Hesperides before leaving the Hesperides, because people were interested? Can I say that that holds a very dear place for me? Because as I was looking at the drugs that are involved in these rituals, you can follow it through all of these encounters. Notice that Heracles is going to be killing some kind of dragon, some kind of guardian. And what is the guardian guarding? The guardian is guarding an oracle. And what does he do? He takes the poison from the dragon. Those dragons that they kill, those serpents who were guarding, right? Those Ophites who were guarding, those dragons, that devil who was guarding, they're always taking the poison. Heracles, that's ultimately what kills him in the end, is that poison. And his teacher is the one has all that serpent drug knowledge, right? And his teacher is the one, Heracles, who, takes his own blood, and his blood poisons Heracles, and it poisons him in a way that people have said, what the hell is going on? Because he puts on a shirt that has this drug impregnated in it. And everybody's like, what the hell why? And for what reason? And then what happens to him after he does it? He bursts into flame. It's the only way for the Son of God to die is to be taken through that Christ, through that venomous exposure. It's the only way for that Son of God. Literally, nobody can kill him, right? It ends up in that same poison that they're talking about is on his arrows. It's on his arrows. So I have a special place for the Hesperides because the apples that they produce are those apples that are guarded by that serpent. Yeah, love it. I love
And
this.
so these magic apples, I've heard pomegranates, I've heard the apple of Eve, I've heard Amanita muscaria. I've heard Libya's where the garden's at in Africa.
Yeah, no, and I've heard him, Dion. I heard, some professor or something, somebody in graduate school, I don't remember, but they were talking about it has to be in Libya because it has something to do with Heracles' mode of transportation to that place. They worked it out, but again, it's speculation. But again, that's what we have to do. We have to look at the evidence and say, what does it show us? In all of these cults, they're all centered around that use of the same thing Jesus is saying when he says, don't drink that thanasimon, right? Or whoever the author of that part of the text was. Yeah.
Okay, I have
What do
one
you
more
think of
question.
this before we
Oh,
lose
sorry.
everything though? Sorry. What do you think of the winnowing fan and Odysseus in that Christ imagery? What do you think is going on with Homer? Because when I looked into a lot of the classics, a lot of classicists don't know what the prophecy is referencing.
The one time I've come across it is in John Tzitzis. And he was saying, I don't remember what it was, but he was saying something about where that is planted in the ground, where that bank, that ore is planted, is where he's supposed to find his new life or his ending, right? It's supposed to bring his death, and that is a reflection of his new life. There's one example of this with it's also Cadmus. Cadmus has this weird prophecy about planting something and then it causes a transformation. So I don't know, Snappy. What's the, again, look, that's number 4. I already struck out, man. I'm back in the dugout.
Well, this is one of the harder ones because people don't know this one in general. So yeah, but go ahead, Jevim. Ask your final question. Sorry.
Okay. Who are the Watchers?
From Enoch?
When Ammon references the Watchers.
Oh, I was
Who,
talking about Ammon. I didn't know if you were asking. Okay, Ammon, you got
yeah,
We
when
can also talk
Ammon
about the
references.
Watchers from Enoch. Neal, we want to hear that too.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, of
Ammon,
course.
Ammon, you first though.
Yeah, no, just real quick, the Watchers that I reference are the Episcopal Watchers, the Episcopoi, and those are the people who are part of the generation of the sons of God, and they are overseeing the transmission of the right from those Enochian sons of God through the women to the next generation of giants, people of renown. And Medea is one of those people of renown. Yeah, love it.
So are these people, are they still alive today, or are they on a different realm? Like sending down energy and intelligence into the oracles like vessels?
Isn't it a possession?
It's the daemons. So it
Yeah.
is. So in a sense, yes, because the demonic possession would be being, and possessed by one of these watchers. Because it's just interchangeable words that we use for angel, daemon, watcher,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's just the same. It's just a
Right.
different word getting at this sort of
And
cosmology.
it's
And
good
this,
to have that clarification too, because I've also seen in the comments everyone asking if Almond believes in the aliens and the UFOs. So it's really good to have that clarification for
I will believe in the aliens as long as they are sexy. No, no. The aliens and the lizards don't interest me because I don't see those in the text. One of the things that I really, really wanted in life, and this is what motivates me, is that road to reason, right? Reason is everything. And I'm sorry until I meet one, and we probe together or whatever it is that you do.
right.
I'm working with hardcore text, and that's what
In
people.
terms,
Yeah.
yeah. In terms of the Watchers and the Muse, I want to point out to people some really interesting things. Number one, the magical tradition never goes away. It just goes underground. And
Mhm.
you can find the Muse tradition where people who are inspired become possessed and draw down the Muse. I'll give you a perfect example. Read Edgar Allan Poe's Ligeia. He tells you how to do it, what it's about, the death, the resurrection. Same thing in Morella. All of this stuff is still here. For
I
those
was
of you here.
reading. I was reading him, Snappy, when I was getting into the text that had to do with the use of an incubus, and I'll just say this: there was there was a moment when I questioned my scientific, capabilities, because I had entered into an act that was sensed and perceived and reported by a person that the report could only be miraculous, right? It's the hovering and doing the incubus thing. When I was reading about the incubus, I was scientifically dissecting how this was being done, and I said, okay, I'm going to do it and see what happens. I'm just telling you scientifically. And then the very next day, it was reported exactly what I ended up, uh, projecting. There's no belief involved. Somebody called me and said, this is what's going on. And the person that it happened to was ejected from the university for problems with mental stability. So I can tell you for a fact the physics behind what people say. Oh, he's demon possessed. There's a reason they wanted to investigate me for demon possession, right? Because there were things that I could reportedly do that people it was causing. When it got to courts, when it got to the courts, because I came after the university, because you can't fire somebody for translating Seneca. I'm sorry. You can't do that. So when I went after the courts, it became an issue with the attorneys involved to what extent I was operating a cult, right? That became the question. To what point people believe that you are able to translocate and a form that is vampiric, right? And that was the fervor that was on campus. And that fervor perfectly and beautifully matched everything that the muse had told me. Everything in all of these passages. People say, is the muse, are you talking about a muse that's an idea or an ideal? No, I'm talking about an actual muse. I'm talking about opening up a text and being told exactly how to perform certain things, do certain things, and how to work, right? That's the power of the Logos. And when, for example, I tell this one, and I want people to realize this because I tell everybody, people say, you're a genius. You figured something out. It's incredible. You're a genius. Oh, it's very, no, I'm not a genius. I'm a total cheat. I have a muse. You can't see her, but she's standing next to me. And if I ask her, show me X, Y, or Z, she'll do it. And I asked her, show me how to do this. And I projected in the very next day reports of it. And I realized right away, oh, okay, there's some real significant God stuff going on here, right? When Archilochus stands up and he says, I'm a servant of the God of war and the muses, right? And the beauty of the muses, right? He's not saying that because he's coming up with an abstract idea. People need to understand the muse is not an abstraction. And people say, oh, it's just somebody's inspiration. No, it is not. They didn't talk about that. It's not how they approached it. They approached it as an actual entity, right? The Holy Spirit is the classical muse, right? Christians today walk around praying and working in the Holy Spirit. They understand what that means. There is a reality to it. And that's why some people can sense that reality and will say, oh, he's demon possessed. Right.
We got to talk about the real meaning of this, because I was getting frustrated at times because I've tried to explain this to some people who are too Christian focused, right? Okay. Perfect place we can go to, clear source, is Plato. Plato puts in the mouths of Diotima what the freaking daimons are. The daimon is the highest self. It is a spiritual force that connects you between this realm and the next realm. It allows you to move between the planes. To speak with the demon and be possessed by the demon is to know thyself. The sign that Socrates is the gadfly and is such a great, intelligent man is that he has a daimon. Right?
That's exactly beautifully said. And it's only the recognition. Saba in Greek is the recognition of that power, that invisible power, right? Have you ever wondered why Odysseus is followed around by a teenage girl who gives him all the advice that he needs? She's a goddess. She's the virgin, right? Nobody wondered why this was happening. Nobody wondered why he's out collecting arrow poison. Nobody wondered about why it is that Odysseus is able to go to the underworld. Odysseus goes to the underworld, right? Why? How's he doing that? What's going on? There's an invisible goddess who follows him around. And that connection, people didn't, the earliest temples in Greece, the temples to the muses, right? Those forces are what are guiding the oracles and hence the governments in Greece. And if you think that I'm smart and clever enough to come up with the stuff, you're just wrong. Let me tell you one thing, and I'll shut up. Dr. Carl Ruck emailed me one day, and he said, we were having conversations back and forth, and he said, look, if what you're saying is accurate, you're going to have to find some anus that's purple. It's covered with the dye, the purple. And I said, I got off the email. I went to my bookshelves. I asked the muse, give me the text where we've got a purple anus so I can give it to him. And I pulled it off the shelf and opened up randomly to a page to the only purple anus I have ever seen. Right? Sent it back to him. Now, it happens to be in the work that talks about sacred sodomy and that talks about the use of the drug Satyrion, which is the one that causes you to enter into the erect state so that you can go through the rite, the ritual operation, right? The satyrs, we're making satyrs. So look, I didn't figure this out. I literally asked her, walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out the source, and I sent it right away. It's in the logs. I can send the emails. I still got them, right? That's the muse, right? Don't think that the muse is I'm sitting around getting inspired. No, this is reality. If you want to pull off an incubus, right, you've got to have an intermediary. You've got to have that Holy Spirit to get it done. Or the physics, whatever they are, the quantum physics, whatever they are, they won't work.
And, people don't realize how common and how easy it is to reach the muse and how this possession can be explored. Like, for example, I'm a musician. The name Snappy is because I'm a body percussionist. I got to perform on the Tonight Show. I've traveled the world. I've done several different commercials, the whole nine. All of this is just Bacchic goddess worship. It's all possession by the muse, period. It's all about entering into trance states, and it's literally been an expression of my spiritual fervor.
The drugs is a shortcut where you could just do DMT or ayahuasca and you just get a instant shortcut to that state. That's why the kukion is for. That's why the initiates drink the kukion. You got to get there somehow.
There are many different ways, and this is something I want to also talk about because, like, even within the Bacchic tradition, okay, you have the whirling dancers, the women who wear these dresses and spin out of control while beating on the timbalon, or you have the men who beat themselves while whipping themselves to the point of ecstasy. This is a well-documented tradition within the Greek, and you see it everywhere, though, across the Indian world, across the African world. Becoming possessed by the drum is huge. Dion, you're also a percussionist. You've had these experiences. We've talked about this.
100%. Ethnomusicology, that's how I got into the mystery, was the use of sound in ritualized ancient context. And so I thought I was learning to play drums, but I was learning the mystery. And I've been to over 12 countries, went with the tribes in the Amazon, tribes in Africa, Asia, different places. And you'll see the mystery is the same everywhere. It's a use of sound, herbs. It's a relationship with nature that we've lost. So all this stuff seems out of context. Snake venoms and burning purple, all these mysteries. It doesn't make sense to people.
We're not in the tribal mindset. We're not back to that primordial Bronze Age image. We need to go back to when we were touching grass, when we knew where our food came from and where our water was from, when we were attached to the ancestors, when we buried them in our bloody houses,
Exactly. I wanted to ask Ammon if he thought that the sortes was tapping into this same type of energy of the muse as we use when we do our tarot readings.
Yeah. Sortition is the oldest branch of necromancy. And it goes way back with all sorts of different devices and bones and all sorts of stuff like that. But the bibliomancy to me has that special place where you're using the sortes to basically make a bridge between you and the reality that's on the other side of the dark star. That's how Claudian talks about it. That can be done through the process of randomization. And that's the only way that I can scientifically understand even a little bit of what's going on, is to look at it that way. Yeah.
I wanted to tell you that I come from a long line of Appalachian Christian witches. And as far back as I can remember, my grandmother used bibliomancy with the Bible, and it worked every single time. And my mother, so it is a tradition, I feel like, that was somehow able to stay alive from ancient times till now.
Well, to me, all of this is Saturnian magic, okay? And what is Saturnian magic? It's the magic of the cut up, division and remixing, the Seder plate. What is the Seder plate? It's the mixed plate. You cut everything up, you rearrange it on the plate. What is the sortes? You invoke the random, you mix things up to create the new. You bring transformation and change. This is extreme power. And this is about breaking things down to their individual parts and seeing the whole. That's what Saturn does. He's forced into that reflective mode. That's where wisdom comes from the cutting, from removing and division.
And your testicles, Snappy. Your testicles can be removed by that scythe, which I think is exactly what you were just talking about. I think the initiates who are worshiping the Great Mother, I think they've honed in on that avenue. It's something, I don't know if it's just once you're lost your testosterone, your brain kind of recovers. I don't know. I don't get it.
Well, it's also part of the cycle. We know this, okay? This is another thing that a lot of people miss in the mystery. Saturn becomes feminized. They are castrated and brought low and become the Earth underworld mother, right? That's part of this mystery. But there's a lot of people get so confused with the gender, right? It's just like the Corey. Persephone becomes Pluto. She is the master of the underworld. That's part of the transformation. There is this shift in genders as well that occurs. There's always this transformation in the Greek world.
And they have the concept of dual gendered, right? And they use it of specific gods, the dual gendered god, right? And so it's kind of I don't know, it's almost like they have a more sophisticated understanding of how existence and gender are intertwined, and like they're exercising that.
You explained it to me with the Greek in one of our first lessons when we were looking at the alphabet. You said it in an offhand comment that it was about tuning the genders and tuning the spheres and tuning the rainbow, right? Iota is the fulcrum. That's your great mother, and everything else is along that spectrum. And you can move more feminine to more masculine.
I gotta get going soon, but I could stick around if you want, or if you're gonna be around.
We're gonna wind down here.
Okay.
This is kind of coming to an end. So
cool. I'll stick around then.
So I just want to
yeah, you're fine. Never mind.
No, we're gonna wind down here because I want to kind of we're coming to the 2.5 hour mark. It's a lot to ask for you guys, and we don't want to take up people's too much time.
Great, I'm having fun.
Of course.
I just wanted to make sure if it's going on for another hour or not, I'll just kick out in a couple minutes. But we're good.
But I want to ask you guys, each of you, what was your main takeaway from this whole Danny Jones experience and this massive increase of intention? And where do you plan to go with your respective channels?
Who wants to take? You want to take that first?
Sure, I'll take a shot first while you sit there and think of an answer, you jerk. Yeah, no. The only thing I feel, Snappy, in all honesty, is a humility, because people are now paying attention, and now's the chance that we can take the information as accurately as we possibly can, without any ideas, without any theories, without any sort of attachment to money and making things in the world. And we can make it, we have a chance to protect those sources. And that charges me with people. So the fact that people would come to the museum in the first place, I tend to be really negative, and I tend to be kind of pessimistic. And this whole experience with Danny Jones has shown me not to be like that. That people are good, and when they're given a chance to have access to that reality, they follow it, because there's something in human nature that draws us to that reality. That's my answer. Neal, what's your answer?
I mean, well said there. I mean, look, I was just excited to see how many people are interested in these ancient texts as I am, because this is like my purpose right now. This is what I do. This is all I do. All I do is dig into ancient texts, find fascinating things that I feel like needs to be spotlighted, make a video on it. And so
that's why we love you, Neal. Honestly.
And that's why we got to do these more often. First of all, like at least once a month, we need to have them meet these 200%.
Neal texts. For those of you who don't know, Neal is telling you the truth when that's all he does, because he texts me at 2 a.m.
I was sending the screenshots.
Something about Elagabalus or something. I'm like,
yeah. Well, that's because you're the one person that actually wants to see this shit. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, if I discover something in a text that I like that plays into what we're looking at, I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna look at this. Oh, I found this is from Dioscorides. I found this random passage.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I'm doing
that
because
it's dope. It's dope, isn't it, Neal? You can't, once you inhale that real goodness of those texts, you can't stop.
That's what I wanted to say. Once you get to a point where you're starting to read about the ancient world, and you get enough sources read where you start to picture in your head what it looks like, it starts to become real, and then more color gets added, and then all of a sudden there's wind, and all of a sudden the trees are blowing, and all of a sudden you can see the world like you're there, because you have all these sources put more and more color into the ancient world. When I first started digging in these ancient sources, all I thought about was the ancient world was like the Bible.
You're doing the necromantic magic, Neal. This is hugely important.
I'm bringing the ancient world back to life, and I can picture it now. And once you get enough of that vision of the ancient world, it's addicting. You just want to find out more.
And that's the magic of literature and building this faculty of the imagination, right? I feel like in our modern age, a lot of us have not trained this muscle. We've given it over to film and to easy consumable media. Literature is something that forces you to work. If you want to perceive the images, you have to perceive them. And we're interested, especially in the aesthete tradition, right? The mythopoetic image is the reflection of God. This is how, by exploring these images, you get the totality of being, right? The imagination can expand you to all realities. So with that said, though, I won't go too mystical on your butts. Jevim, do you have any final questions? And then we'll let Dion have the final word. So
I want to thank Danny Jones for giving Ammon a platform, because I know that we had an interview with Hamilton, and you have to go to Patreon to see it. But Danny Jones was like, "We're going on YouTube," so
he got
I
a lot
never
of
heard it
too.
Yeah, and I had never heard of Danny Jones before that, but I wanted to, I have so much gratitude for him doing that for Almond, and then wanting you, Neal, to go and be like, and then we have this flood of people, right? And I'm like, we are a united front. Almond has support, and I'm so glad that we all have each other as a community. Yes, it is. And that Almond has support. You have support, Neal, because you have publicly stayed beside Almond this whole time, and then
Oh yeah,
Snappy has stayed, and yeah, I mean, we are a united front, and we are a very strong, thriving community, and we are growing every single day
just
with
getting
every
started.
live. Is a huge flood of people. I'm so grateful to Danny Jones because he has no idea what he started, or maybe he does. I hope he does.
Did
That's all.
we're just getting started, I think.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be something big. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
No,
just
absolutely.
people who love the ancient world, love ancient Greek, love ancient Latin, and that's it.
Well, they're sick of well, for one, they're sick of Christianity saying you
Right.
can't do this and you can't do that.
That's
It's
what
just
it is.
stupid.
People want something different, and people like Christianity because they were told that it was this ancient, going all the way back to Adam religion, and then they find out, wait a minute, this religion really is one of the newer ones in comparison to the ancient world, ancient Greeks and ancient Etruscans or ancient Egyptians. This is Christianity is the new kid on the block. What are we
Well,
doing? Let's go to the
Right.
real shit.
one
That's
thing I'll say about all this magic, all of this stuff about the muse and connecting to Venus, Bacchus, all of the stuff that we're all engaged in, okay? What does it do? Fundamentally, it gives you the tools to face fear, to reaffirm life, and to go forward in transformation, right? This is directly opposed to all of the monism. This is what we're about: evolution, about learning, and about growth. The muse is going to set you on a path of study and wisdom and expansion. And here's the thing, it's like people need this. We're all confused. The life is absurd. And we're seeing how our religion has become this tool of binding and control, but there is power in some of their tools. We're taking those tools back and we're using them for our own ends. The muse, the mother goddess, has been obscured within the church, or hidden and obscured within codified languages. Someone like Ammon is teaching you the Greek. You can read it for yourself. There's no hidden anything. You want the ability to imagine and to see? Learn the Greek.
and you
That's what I tell everybody. If you doubt Almond, he's teaching you for free. Just go learn it and read it yourself.
Last words, Dion. How do you want to end this conversation, and what do you want to ask? You're muted, my friend.
Oh, I'm on mute. So, first thing, I want to thank everybody who watched and participated at home. We value your time and thank you for
500 people.
exploring. Yeah, I honor you guys for coming on today, answering some wild questions. This has totally been fun. Anybody watching, if you want, join us tomorrow. We're going to live stream. We're going to get into some of these mysteries and talk about ancient Egyptian rituals where they're growing mushrooms on dead bodies.
Oh,
Using the burning purple as a form of birth control, even hallucinogenic fabrics.
We're going to talk about the semen of the gods, ingesting the semen of Helios, being raped by Sobek, spermatophagy within the Catholic Church. We're going to get into the gross and the wild.
Yeah.
Risky.
It's the ancient world, and basically, we're imagining the ancient world and how it was really like. Because our world is absurd in a different way. So with that said, I would like everybody out there that's watching to have a blessed life, live your best life, go out there and have fun, be spontaneous. Thank you for joining us. What else can I say but just be best.
Oh, by the way, I'm dropping a video tomorrow, which is also
yeah.
which is also the reason why I because I got to finish it, but it's all good. We're fine. But yeah, dropping a video tomorrow, and it's Ammon. You're the one that showed the preview of it. So I don't know if whoever was watching Ammon's last live when he showed the preview of the Borborites with the semen Eucharist, that video is going to drop on my channel tomorrow. It's an hour and a half long documentary.
Chain transmission.
Borborites, Carpocratians, Marcion, the Nassenes, all the ancient Christian shit, all the dirty shit.
Well, with that, I'll leave you with the image then of chain transmission, which was passed down by a major prophet to his disciples, passed down to the priests, then passed down to the parishioners in an unbroken chain transmission of semen. It's a dirty tradition in the church. so that they tell you that you're receiving the semen of Jesus Christ in an unbroken chain transmission of 2,000 years.
Damn.
Yummy.
But yeah, we're gonna get into some wildness, but everyone, thank you so much. Ammon, any last words for everyone?
I've got two. Hail Satan.
And
Hail,
Neal,
hail Satan.
all right. Hail Satan, everyone. Peace and love, and we'll see you tomorrow on our next live. Thank you. Take care.